Are you moving to Seattle and feeling overwhelmed by the thought of finding the perfect school for your kids? You are not alone. Choosing the right school is one of the most important decisions for families relocating to the area because that can make or break your kids' whole experience, right? So in today's video, I'm going to uncover the top-rated schools in Seattle and the surrounding suburbs so you can feel confident in your choice. So I'm going to share what some of the best-rated schools are, and then I'm going to tell you how to do your own research if you need to kind of look into more different options. But we can look, from academic excellence to extracurricular activities. We can talk about what makes these schools good and whether or not they're going to be a good fit for your child. Some of them are specialty schools, private schools, lots of different options. So stick around to discover the best educational options that Seattle has to offer, and your child's future is about to start here. So welcome to my channel. If you're wondering how to find the best schools in Seattle, you are not alone. One of the most common questions we get from families moving to the area is about school quality. So in this video, I'm going to explore the top-rated schools in Seattle according to Niche and GreatSchools. So whether you're considering public, private, charter schools, we've got you covered. Let's dive in and help you make an informed choice for your family's education. So my name is Emily Cressey. I'm a local real estate agent here in the Seattle area, and the focus of this channel is actually helping people who are relocating to the area. So if that's you and you want to know about the best schools, the commutes, the foods, the jobs, everything, make sure you subscribe so you can stay posted. I know it takes a lot of research as you're moving to a new place to kind of get the lay of the land. So usually what I like to do is have some amount of focus on the map. This is the Seattle area. I just like to kind of start with these typically to give people an idea of where we are orientationally. Plus, I got this cool iPad for Christmas, so we're going to give it a whirl. So the city of Seattle is right here. You see it in red, and the city of Bellevue is right here. These two cities are like the big employment hubs in the area. So if you don't have a job yet, or if maybe you're working for one of the big tech companies like Google or Amazon, chances are you're going to have a chance to work in one of these downtown areas. Now, what that means is that we tend to have a lot of traffic getting into here. You can tell there's so much water. This is all water here. This is water here. This is water here. So what that means is that we're limited on where we can drive, right? So this freeway here is I-5. This is the big freeway that goes down from Canada to California through Oregon. So as far as the big international freeway goes, this is it. And then we have a loop over here, which is goes around the east side of Lake Washington. So that is where you're going to be driving if you're going to Bellevue. Now, chances are that you're going to be living or working in one of these places, although the other big employment center that you could be looking at is Everett up here, which is where Boeing is. There's a naval station there. And Tacoma down here, which is our other big port city, which is also on the water. So this is another big employment center. So it's possible, I've certainly had people that got priced out of Seattle, so they wanted to live in Tacoma and commute up into Seattle. Sometimes one spouse will work in one will work in the other. So those are some options as far as the locations that you might be looking at for work. So when it comes to schools, the area that's known for having the best schools overall, generally the best of everything, is what we call the East Side, which is the east side of Lake Washington. This is Lake Washington. This is Lake Washington. This is Mercer Island here. And this area, this is Lake Sammamish. That's a good area too. Once we get on the far side of Lake Sammamish, we're starting to get a little farther away from town. But this area is called the East Side, particularly right here by Bellevue. And this is where the most expensive real estate is, and also typically the best schools. So you're going to have a lot of good options pretty much uniformly across the board. If money is no object, you just want to make sure you're going to be by good schools. I'm not saying there are no bad schools there, but this would be the area that you would want to try to be in if you can afford it. Another place that's really popular for schools is the Bothell area, which is up here. Bothell has what's called the North Shore School District. North Shore School District, right here at Bothell, are also well regarded. And then there are also some good schools down here in the East Renton Highlands and Maple Valley. Once you start getting out here, you'll notice on the map, this is from Google Maps, it starts to get very green. These green areas are pretty rural. That's a place where, you might run into a horse. You might run into multi-acre properties. It just tends to be not as built up and developed. So if you're wanting to be kind of in a city or a suburb, then you're not going to be in a green area. If you want to be in fields and horse country, then the green area is for you. But note that we do start to get somewhat mountainous. Part of the reason that this is not more developed is because it is a mountainous area. So this is Snoqualmie Pass. This is where skiing is happening. And Duval, this is pretty farmy. There are some like flooding areas as well out here. So Carnation, Duval, this is Highway 9, I believe, and it tends to be pretty rural east of there. East of this area, it tends to be pretty rural. That's kind of the outskirts of town. We do have friends that live in Duval. They come into Bothell for a little private school that my kids happen to go to. So, I mean, that's certainly an option. You can live out there. You can commute into Redmond or up to Everett, but you're going to feel like you're pretty far out of the city. So just in terms of that, you don't want it to be too crazy. If you're not on the east side or you can't afford to be on the east side, then chances are you might be considering Seattle. The city of Seattle runs from about right here, which is 145th, to down here. We have some other cities like Renton, Des Moines, Kent, SeaTac, other municipalities. So this area right here is pretty much the city of Seattle. And a lot of people have been finding over the last couple of years that they don't like Seattle, that it's too much homelessness, kind of like, the stories that you hear out of San Francisco, homelessness, drug users, people, prostitution, tents with homeless people living in them and stuff like that. So if you have young kids, that may or may not appeal to you. And I remember seeing a parent with a child downtown. It looked like they were coming out of one of the apartment or condo buildings. And I remember being surprised that there was actually a child down there, because it's fairly unusual to see kids living in downtown Seattle. The city of Seattle itself, circled here, has more dogs than it does children, and it has more cats than it does dogs. So a lot of the people that live in this area with children don't tend to live within the city of Seattle. And I would say of this, if we go in a little bit here, there are different neighborhoods. So this area down here is close to the airport, SeaTac Airport. You can see the field right there, the landing strip or whatever. There's a Boeing airport, and then which is for Boeing, where they make the airplanes. And then there's SeaTac, which is our big international airport. And so there's airplanes taking off here. And then the South Seattle area tends to be somewhat industrial. There are train tracks hauling freight. There's a port here. You might have seen those big orange cranes in the port of Seattle. They kind of look like dinosaurs to me. They're unloading boxcars from ships and putting them on trains and trucks and things like that. And so there's some industrial stuff going on here that just makes this whole area not very residential at all. Around here, West Seattle, I actually really like. There's beachiness, there's community. This is a really fun place to live. It almost feels a little like a vacation town. And then over here on Lake Washington, there's some really nice houses, some nice neighborhoods. Magnolia is over here. There's also Leschi over here. I think I was going to mention that. So there's some really nice neighborhoods here. In this area, it's the University of Washington and Children's Hospital. So that attracts a lot of like doctors and university professors and things like that. So this is kind of a wealthy little enclave, and pretty much anything that's along the water is going to be nicer unless it's industrial. So I'm trying to show you like these blue areas are the more industrial areas, and then these green areas are more like the go zone. And so nice areas here along the coast, although northeast Seattle, this is closer to where I live. I would say there's like a little bit of nice stuff there, but this little road right here is a road. So, I mean, pretty much the nice stuff is just on this side of it by the water. It's not like extending up to this area. This area is fine. This is more just suburbs and things like that. But the view property that's really luxury is constrained. So anyway, yeah, just along the edges. And then there are some nice areas, like there's gated communities up here, gated communities and things like that, which are really nice, but like multi-million-dollar entry point. Be happy to show you those types of properties, but that's not what most people are looking for or expecting. So let's go back, kind of now having this orientation. We talked about Bothell. Linwood is a really nice kind of sister city to Bothell. We have the light rail that goes down here along I-5, but the schools are not as good. The reason that Linwood tends to be less expensive than Bothell in my mind is primarily because the schools are not as good. There's also more shopping here, which is nice, malls and restaurants and things like that. But there's this road called Aurora Avenue, Highway 99, which is not the best. It has a lot of bus traffic, and further south it has more crime and prostitution. So like this is where you're going to find your e-cig vape shops, your payday loan shops, your car dealerships, and things like that. And then down here, I would say this is a less expensive area. We have a lot of people here who are working at the airports or working in the industrial areas down here. So this tends to be less expensive. So if you're worried about price and getting priced out, then you can keep an eye out for what's going on here. Federal Way is kind of the border of the King County line. Tacoma is in Pierce County, and this is in King County. So we have a lot of people kind of living here and commuting into Seattle, but it's going to be about an hour drive in traffic to get in during rush hour. Here, it's probably going to be maybe 40 minutes. Here, it's going to be 50 to 60, but we do have the light rail now, which basically follows I-5. So if from Linwood south to SeaTac, around here. So all of that area is accessible by light rail, and then they have some light rail going in on the east side, and they're expanding it down into Federal Way here. So more and more good stuff as far as transportation, but you might want to consider where you're living based on some of these factors. Now, let's go back to again, got to refocus myself on the schools here. Okay, so one of the resources that I like to use for helping clients understand schools is this website called greatschools.org. And if you haven't looked at this before, it's a great tool, especially once you start narrowing down what areas and parts of town you're going to be looking in. So what we're looking at right now, this area is the city of Seattle, and they have hopped over there to Bellevue. But you can see that there are a lot of schools with very high ratings, 8, 9, 10 ratings within the city of Seattle. Now, the city of Seattle is fairly expensive to live in, and so a lot of people here are going to be fairly well off, wealthy, smart working parents, that kind of a thing. And then you can see kind of where these are focusing. There's also the ability to go to, you can sort by elementary. So if your kids are going to be in elementary school age, you can look at that. You can look at middle school age, and it drops off a little bit in terms of the scores. We're not seeing as many great scores, but Magnolia right here by Discovery Park tends to be a good place to go. Ballard, just north of this waterway, Ballard tends to be a good place to go for schools. And then Queen Anne is another very expensive area. There are more apartments here, I would say, and you get into the downtown area pretty quickly. So right here by Belltown, that's near the Pike Place Market. That's near the Space Needle. This is the Space Needle right here, this park. So you can kind of see that Queen Anne is pretty close. There are a lot of really nice like mansions, old Victorian homes. This was one of the earlier places to get developed when, and in the 1880s and 90s when Seattle was being built. This is one of the oldest and best neighborhoods. It has great views of the city. It has great views of the water. It's up on a hill, but it is very proximate to the downtown urban vibe there. You can see over here, this is the University of Washington in that area. There's a 1, it's not very good. There's another 1. So these areas that are more, this is SoDo, south of downtown, south Do downtown. This is Cherry Hill. So these are going to feel very urban, not too many like houses there as opposed to apartments or condos. It's a urban lifestyle. And then this is West Seattle with the kind of beach town feel. Because there were a lot of great other schools, I think looking at the limiting factor, like where are there fewer schools that are good, can be helpful. And then if we want to look at the high schools, these are the high schools. So again, Ballard High School is great over here. Ravenna, which is by the University of Washington. Wallingford, North Queen Anne, better high schools in this area. This is Leschi, the Central District. Downtown, this is by Chinatown, the International District. And then here's SoDo again doing poorly. This is that industrial area that I was telling you about. I'm going to be looking toward more like this northwest area of Seattle. If you're looking for great public high schools, there's some good options there in Ballard, Magnolia, Queen Anne. And then there's this one here. Garfield is one of our premier high schools, which is right over there. Oops. Okay, so that's great schools, and that's how that works. So if you're evaluating these different neighborhoods, as far as kind of finding that intersection of affordability and good schools, you're seeing here in Magnolia, you're seeing here in Ballard. I'll write these for you. Ballard, Magnolia, and then Bothell, Kirkland, Bellevue, Newcastle, Issaquah. These are all pretty uniformly good. Everett tends to be not so good. So this is kind of where I would draw the line on that. But we've got some great schools in Mukilteo over here as well. They have a great high school, Mukilteo. This is where a lot of pilots go. There you can see there's another airport here. It's a small one. So a lot of people who work at Boeing in Everett like to live here, and then they fly their hobby planes on the weekends and stuff like that. There's also great views of the water, and like many of our beach areas, there are a lot of hills. So you don't have to live just on the coast to be able to see the water. And then Linwood, I would say medium, maybe 5 to 7 on the school rankings. Not as good, but not horrible. And I expect there's been a ton of growth in this area because of the light rail coming in, just like tons of higher density stuff, apartments, condos, but more people moving there. Also during COVID, when everybody was priced out and they couldn't afford to live in Bothell, then Linwood was like the logical place that they would go. So I would expect that we're going to be seeing an improvement in their schools with a lot of families coming into this area. Shoreline is another place that I want to take a look at for you because this is where I live, grew up in the Shoreline School District. And it used to be very well thought of and very fantastic because everybody who didn't want to live in the city of Seattle at 145th North, they would be in Shoreline. And it was like, this is where all the families lived because they didn't want to live in Seattle. So they would just come north to Shoreline, have the great Shoreline schools. And that was kind of what we were known for at the time. And more recently, I've seen that drop off a little bit with lower school ratings. For example, the last time I looked, Shorewood High School, which is getting a 9 here, was getting a 7. That was like a couple years ago. So it seems like things are moving up in this regard. And there are a lot of good schools, at least how they're ranked here. in the shoreline area. So if you're living in shoreline, you can go south into Seattle, you can go north into Everett, you can drive. This is not a highway, it's more of a... So before we continue, if you're enjoying this video and finding it helpful, make sure to hit that like button. If you want a personalized recommendation or advice about moving to Seattle or navigating the school system, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can schedule a Zoom call with me where we can discuss your specific needs and questions. So let's connect and ensure your family's transition to Seattle is as smooth as possible. Roadway, you can drive over here and get into Bellevue that way. You can drive down here and get into Bellevue that way, or you can go on the freeway up and over. So just depending on traffic, it's not going to be a short commute. It's probably going to be about 45 minutes to get over here, maybe more if you're going during rush hour. There is on this area it's called the Flex Pass, I think. It allows you, it's a toll optional road. So you're going to have 2 sets of lanes. When you're driving down the freeway, you're going to have 2 lanes that are toll, and then you're going to have 3 lanes that are free. So you can choose, there are different points that you can go in or out of these lanes. And it scans you. You have a little box that you Velcro to your windshield, and it will scan you automatically when you drive through there. And the amount of the toll actually changes depending on congestion. So if it's rush hour and it's just packed, then it's going to be more expensive to drive on those toll lanes. On the other hand, if it's like Saturday morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, nobody's on the road, then it might be free. They're like, we don't care where you drive, you can drive in the toll lanes for free. Also, if you have a carpool of 3 people or more, it's called a high occupancy vehicle, then you can ride for free in the toll lanes. So for example, when I'm taking my kids to the orthodontist in Bellevue, then we go in the toll lanes for free because we are a carpool. But you could drive with coworkers, you could drive with your kid, like just depending on when and where you're planning to go there. They actually have something called a van pool here where you can get a van through like the bus system, the metro. I think you have to pay, or there's some, I haven't tried it, but you get the van, you drive the van, you pick up like coworkers on the way, and then you can go into the office using a carpool. And so it saves gas and saves you time. The other thing that I wanted to point out here as far as when you're doing your research is this website called niche.com. You might have heard of it if you've been searching for this online. But you can see here on the right, there's this column that's Cascadia Elementary School, Garfield High School. So they're kind of ranking the schools in order from best to worst. And you can get an idea. These are all in Seattle. But if you wanted to move up here, then you could look at these schools. So Linwood, you're getting a lot of A and B schools. So you can kind of see what this is like. This one, Maplewood, is a parent cooperative. This one here, Edmonds Woodway High School. Woodway is a very expensive area. It's kind of hidden in the hills by the beach over there in Edmonds. But there are like $20 million estates over there. So that's a cool place. And then Challenge Elementary School is also in Edmonds. Edmonds is known as having a bowl. It's almost like stadium seating looking out over their marina. They have the ferry that comes and goes there. They've done a really nice job of kind of building up this small town. It almost feels European where you can live, and it's kind of a great little community. A lot of people really like it in Edmonds. It's a little bit farther from the freeway, so it's a little bit harder to get into Seattle, but it's its own little enclave. It's very cute, and they have some great schools over there, and it tends to be just kind of a more uniformly nicer, wealthier, safer feeling area. So those are some things to look at as you're kind of doing your research. But I would say, I hope that this video has kind of given you some highlights as far as where you want to live to get into the best schools, where you want to avoid because it's an industrial area, and then what you want to look for as far as commuting
views and the values of the other properties around you. So anyway, I had a ton of fun making this video. Let me know if you have specific questions or if you've had experiences with certain schools that you like and don't like. I'm going to also try to do an extension here on private schools so we can take a look at that as well. I actually myself, growing up here, started in the public school system and switched to private schools. I know a lot of people are switching to private schools now. So there's tons of little like small Catholic schools and Christian schools and things. And then there are a couple of really big names, somewhat like famous, well-to-do type of schools that I want to point out as well.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope this guide to the best schools in Seattle has been informative and helpful. If you have any questions or you need further assistance, feel free to reach out via my website or in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more valuable content on living and thriving in Seattle. Your family's education is definitely a priority, and I'm here to help you every step of the way. So this is Emily Cressey with HomeProAssociates.com, and until we meet again, I will see you in the next video.